Hello. Oh, that's very loud. Hello, a warm welcome also on the upper balconies, a warm welcome down here. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon here at Berlinale Talents in the Hauhebel am Ufer. As you know, and as you can see, the topic this year is the nature of relations. So we are hoping to create interesting relations, and today I'm sure we are creating a very interesting one. And let me briefly introduce you to the two guests that we have today. Although the session is, by the way, called "The Director Must Not Be Credited," but I do it. But first of all, I would like to introduce you to Thomas Oberender. Thomas is a good friend of us. He's the director of the Berliner Festspiele here in Berlin. And in that position, he's overseeing a festival, exhibitions, program series, individual events for music, film, everything. So he's an expert in creating relations. And he's today talking together here on stage with another Thomas Vinterberg. And Thomas Vinterberg is back here in this year's program of the festival with a new film, the Commune. Hopefully I pronounce it correctly, the Commune, complexities. But you will know him, of course, also from the other films. So without any further ado, please give a very warm welcome from all the balconies to Thomas Oberender and Thomas Vinterberg.
Hello. It works. So here we are.
A warm welcome to you too. How do you spell Commune in Danish, the title of the new film?
Kollektivet. K-O-L-L.
Kollektivet.
E-K-T-I-V-E-T. Kollektivet. It's very simple.
Yeah.
Die Kommune, yeah?
It's very understandable also if you don't speak Danish.
Well, there you go.
To start with the beginning, I would say if you founded this group of people who became famous as the Dogma people, you wrote this manifest in, I think, 40 minutes, I read in a newspaper. This was the beginning of, I would say, a revolutionary movement, and that it changed a lot in the world of movies. But also, beside it, it changed a lot in the understanding of movies and in the way you search for a clear, new, and naked reality in films. And I mean, in the same time, it was a very strong statement in the way how you produced as a kollektivet. Can you tell me what was the reason for this move you made in this time?
Well, Dogma is all the way back from 95. And back then, a colleague of mine, Lars von Trier, and myself were trying to purify filmmaking, to make it as naked as possible. We were also trying to create a revolt against the existing cinema, the mediocrity of cinema. Also, I guess, what I've learned later, the mediocrity that lies within yourself. It was a joyful, arrogant, vain, but very, very playful attempt to free ourselves from the restraints of filmmaking. I guess filmmaking is the most conventional and conservative art form that you can find, still, or even more so today.
Why do you say that?
Because it tends to be very professionalized. People excuse it because it costs money, but I don't think that's the reason. There's a certain language in the industry that strains it down to becoming, conventionalized. People want to be held in their hand from A to B. And we fulfill that wish. Which in some extent obviously is a little sad. But we we tried back then desperately to avoid that, and we tried to liberate ourselves by restraining ourselves. We can obviously elaborate on that, but we put some very, very strong borders around our creative work by saying 10 Commandments of Dogma. I don't know if you know those commandments, but we said things like we can't use any artificial light, we can't use makeup, no music. I remember the moment of the music. I said to Lars, what about music? And he said, oh, of course, it has to go. Oh, no, we can't. Oh, yeah. It was kind of a very joyful moment. And we took away everything that we could hide us behind, in some extent. And by restraining ourselves, I felt the greatest sense of artistic liberation ever.
You mentioned that this dogma movement was created on 3 levels. One is the aesthetic level. Another one is the personal level. What you mentioned, that it's also an approach to find a personal truth in the work. And the third level is the political. Could you describe this, the political level of dogma?
Well, the political level was what I was lying in the sentence that I gave before, this sense of riot against a system. We did want to work against the system. We did not allow anyone to read our scripts, even the financiers, which was also kind of arrogant, and which made us change financier, or they changed us to some extent. And there was a need from us to create attention around this. We wanted to make a wave in all humbleness. We wanted people to hear about this. So I guess that makes it slightly political. The artistic level, I also just touched upon, which that lies very much within how creative it is to restrain yourself and how uncreative it is to get a lot of opportunities in life. For instance, for me there was dogma, and then came a lot of success, and with success comes a lot of opportunities, and that killed me creatively. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we that was sort of the artistic level of it. The personal level, I don't know, it was meant to not be personal. It became very personal. To some extent, it says, one of the rules says we're not allowed to be credited, which he was fine to mention a minute ago. And yet somehow we all ended up doing our most personal films. But the idea behind rule number 10, which said we're not allowed to be credited, was of a symbolic kind. We wanted to take away taste. Mm-hmm. Taste has to do with vanity, and it has to do with who am I as a director, filthy thoughts like that. We wanted to point the camera outwards and not inwards. And that's why we invented that rule.
Yeah. It seems to me that this was also really a very fresh view on human relations, and it reminds me in a way also there are some rules that are very close to the theater that you propose. It should be right here and right now. No jumping in time and space. Try to have the real-time experience. So it's always things that in the theater world focus on the figures, on the characters, and their relation. I think this was one of the very strong moments of this dogma movement, that you look so close to the real emotional impact of characters and relations and social situations. It's all about power, I would say, about groups, about
well,
fights.
let me comment on this thing. We to some extent we try to purify things, and as I said before, make it naked. And then the day after the success, suddenly there's something called dogma style. Mm. What the fuck was that? That's the end of Dogma.
It was your manifest effect.
And suddenly in Copenhagen, downtown Copenhagen, you can buy Dogma furniture.
Can you describe this kind of furniture?
It's very sparse.
Okay.
And very classy, actually.
Uh-huh.
And elitist. You can even, we have this grocery deliverance, and they have the Dogma box. Mm-hmm. It means there's almost nothing in it, and it's very cheap. So to some extent, it very quickly became a uniform, which obviously was natural, but also a little bit of a disappointment. I think that on the night in, was it 98 in Cannes, where everybody was standing up and giving their ovations, without our knowledge to it, it was the beginning of the end of Dogma already.
With the very first films?
Well, it became fashion,
okay,
right? That's not the idea. We wanted to create revolt, okay? And when it's fashion and it's a star vehicle and it's a festival vehicle, what's left? There's no risk, right?
Yeah.
You know as well as I do that creating great art is always connected to risk. We want to avoid repetition. Repetition of success reminds us that we're going to die. It makes us feel old, and it reminds the audience that we're pulling a gun that we've pulled before. So we have to be on thin ice. We have to be on thin ice together with the audience. So 1,400 people in Cannes standing up, clapping, and Dogma furniture, it's the fucking end.
Let's
right?
have a look on this very nice, very first beginning of Festen. We have a very short clip prepared. I would say this was really the beginning.
Yeah.
Film up. So the organizer said, we don't need to bring the speech because everybody knows it. I think this was a very nice statement for your film and your work. It was not your very first film. I think you have made a very successful film as a student. Then there was a feature film afterwards, and this was the next big project for you. So it's a very fast decision to go a big step in a completely new reality of making films. There was not so much time to be bored from older experiences, I would say. There was another need behind it. If I think about the time when you make this step, it was a time, I would say, also in the visual arts, also in the field of theater, there was this kind of collective movements, let's say the relational artists in the visual art world of France, basically. We did have here in Berlin this Produzentengalerie movement. We did have collectives in theater, but also from Denmark, I would say. Signa, it came a bit later, but I would say it's the same strict rule that they gave themselves. We have Rimini Protocol all over the world. In Europe, I would say, in this time, grown up collective associations of artists. And if I think on your attempt to find a new style, and it's more than a style, it's a style also of producing, of rehearsing, of making films. Do you remember any influence that was important for you in this time?
Oh, wow. Well, at this time, we watched a lot of American movies. Oh, I did. And then I watched Bergman. Mm-hmm. And I still do. That haven't changed. The inspiration for this film, in particular, was The Godfather. Plain and simple. Mm-hmm. I remember the violent brother calling me and say, "I'll do James Caan." And so we were so incredibly amazed by that film as the rest of the world, and it was not very original, but our love was profound for this masterpiece, and we I've always been engaged in making family portraits. You'll see that later on today as well. So that's I guess our main inspiration for this film. You speak a lot about theater, and obviously Dogma was as close as you could get in our work to the experience of theater. The camera was the size of my hand. It was this little flip screen camera. Actually, we were supposed to shoot on film, but we couldn't afford it. It's one of the rules. It says Academy 35mm, which is an old format, film format. Some of you will know about it. We couldn't afford it. There was no money for that. So we ended up on video, and we said, okay, we'll have to end on Academy 35. That'll be sufficient. So we decided to shoot on a tourist camera to make it look as shitty as possible, in a kind of protest even against the producers who said we had to shoot video. And ironically, this became a kind of digital wave in cinema. But you couldn't see those cameras. They were smaller than his camera, and they were hiding behind the curtains, and also because of the sound, we couldn't add any extra sound after. We had to redo the whole scene every time there was a close-up of anyone. Mm-hmm. So it was very much like rehearsing theater. And
was the script completely finished before you started to produce?
The script was more finished than it looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think it's so fresh. It seems to be improvised.
The lines you see here are improvised.
Okay.
But those are very few. There's a couple of lines from the audience. There's a couple of lines from especially the violent brother, who's not a good reader, but a very great improviser. And so some improvised, some didn't. I don't have a religion in how I approach actors, because each actor is an individual, and you want to challenge each one of them in their own way. You want to bring them out of their comfort zone, or you want to bring them back to their comfort zone, but you want to challenge them individually to make them perform as good as possible. So if you take the main character, the guy with the speech, he's very, very good at lines. He can take your shitty lines and bring them to life if he gets enough times to do it. Whereas his violent brother, Thomas, is an excellent improviser. So all you have to do is make rules for them. Make a setup where they generously share and listen to each other and make space for each other.
Can you describe these rules?
Well, for instance, with Thomas, I would say, you improvise from here to here, and then when you do something with your hair, Ulrich says his line. Okay?
Okay.
So it's
a kind of instruction, but gives a space for something that is not determined.
See, the thing is, actors need frames such as we did. What happened here with Dogma was that we took away all the marks in the floor that they're used to. We took away all the lamps. We could follow them with the camera. We could do anything. Here's a room, do what you like. And they didn't like that. It made them insecure.
Yeah.
They need rules. Everybody needs rules.
Usually they need text, yeah.
Well, they had text, but they could do with the text whatever they liked. So I had to invent rules. I would sometimes say, you freak out 50%, and then you empty a glass of water, and then you go to 100%. Stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Or in scenes, there's a scene in this film where they have to find some car keys and steal them from people, and I would have them steal them for real. Would have them find them and not tell them where they are, stuff like that. They need rules and games, patterns, and we quickly had to invent a lot of that.
Could you imagine that an actor tells something about you in this way, that he wants to challenge you, to set you rules, to say what he's expecting from you?
Well, they often do that. If you meet movie stars, for instance. There's always a difference. You very quickly figure out, is this me interviewing him or him interviewing me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's always challenges. But I'm trying to avoid these power games, and I'm trying to make it very clear that I'm in charge. Because I am.
Mm-hmm.
And sharing these little power games, whether it's on a film crew or it's amongst the director and the actor, is useless. The clarity, if we have to talk about collaboration, the clarity is the utmost important thing. Like, if you have 5 designers making one table, the first thing to do is to say, who takes care of the surface? Who takes care of selling it? Who takes care of the foots? And so forth. Because then, when that kind of clarity has appeared, even maybe as a contract, then you can let go. Then it's liberated. If people are not cautious about their field of competence, but they're absolutely aware of who's in charge of what, then they're liberated. It's very simple like that. So when I work with actors, I always demand from them complete faith in me and my control.
It's interesting because if you have this, I think the 9th rule, director should not be announced in the end. The 10th is it, the last one. And in the same way, or in the same time, you describe how important the work of the director is in the process of creation, and more than this. Honestly, I thought in the beginning that there is much more openness for the creativity of the whole team in the process of creation. Or is this...
but don't misunderstand.
Yeah,
there is.
There is, okay.
There's complete openness. My job is not to tell them what to do.
What is your description of what a director does?
In front of an actor, my job is to listen and to set the limits. Like with a rose bush, you cut down something and you make other things flourish. You have to cultivate it. But a very big part of that is listening and receiving ideas, general thoughts, possibilities, challenges, fine, as long as they know that at the end of the day, I'll decide.
You spoke once about your rehearsal system to develop characters. Can you describe it a little bit? Is this something that's given and taken with the actors, changing texts, or is everything prepared, ready if the camera is with them?
No, I think basically a character consists of, this is very basic, consists of what you show to the world and what the character hide from the world. And they also consist of a past. What do they come from? What is the soil they grew from? And what are their dreams? And through existential improvisations, conversations, even fights, disagreements, we're trying to map out those 4 corners. So we're saying, this character, he's the main character of Celebration, okay? He's from Paris. What has he been doing the last couple of days? Who is he conspiring with? There's someone on the phone. Who's that person? We talk about what he wants to show to this party of 60 people. I guess what we agreed back then, or what we did agree back then, was that he was trying to show control, calmness in every movement he does. He washes hands all the time, corrects his things. You know, he's in control, and he's calm. But behind that, the world that he's hiding is flames of hatred and aggression and anger and problems with impotence and alcohol. Okay? So we see snippets of that. And what I find, what I think can create life on screen is if someone has an agenda by being sober, for instance, and they're hiding that they're actually drunk, then suddenly it becomes two-dimensional. So if I was to direct someone in being drunk, I would ask for the opposite. I would say, hide it. Let's try to pretend that you're sober, and then when you step, there's one little crack into the truth of it and what you're hiding, and that's it. And then people think he's pissed in a more than one-dimensional way. So that goes for the moment, that goes for the instant. If we want to show that he's afraid or nervous, try to be in control. Try to hide your nervousness. So we work on that on many levels with the actors.
Before you go in front of the camera, it's weeks before, days before, so that it's not always in front of the camera.
Usually, I normally have 2 weeks of rehearsal, which is a lot. It's much tougher than the shoot, because it's only you and the actors and a room. It's a very sort of naked, awkward moment.
Yeah.
But what I think is that the more you prepare, the more thoroughly you prepare, the more solid the foundation is, more solid than this, the more they can let go in front of the camera. It's very simple. Then they can forget about it. It's like a speech. If you want to make a really good speech and want to let it fly, then you have to know it really well. So we do rehearsals. We primarily rehearse the scenes that are not in the script, meaning the scenes right before the scene. Like, what is he saying right before he does the speech, or what he's saying right after? What about the guy who's supposed to propose to a woman? What is his waiting time before she arrives? How's that? Let's try that. So that you find the foundation for it, but the moment of exploring, the very moment of exploring becomes in front of the camera. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When I heard a long time ago, Alvis Hermanus, he's a theater director, and he spoke to me. The director is the one who directs the direction.
He's the one what?
He's giving the direction.
Yeah.
The director.
Yeah.
Also the Danish.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a tremendous, enormously fan of Alvis Hermanus.
Yeah, I'm too, artistically, absolutely. And he has a very special relation to his actors, I think. He says, let's say in a period of his work that is 10 years ago, he says to his actors, go in a city looking for a character you are interested in. What affects you? It's a question of your last movie that gives the teacher to his student. What affects you? And then live with this character over a month. And half a year later, we will all meet us again in the theater, and you bring your character with you without bringing him as a person. You're copying him. Yeah. And you try to understand his life, and so he developed plays by bringing material back on stage that was picked up in real life. And sometimes for me, I feel it's very close to your films. And by the way, I don't know if you know that, Thomas Vinterberg is really a very successful theater director too. And there is a very close relation between his work for the cinema and his theater work. Festen, the very first film, became a really great hit on the theater stages. Hundreds of performances are produced from this script of the movie. I don't know any other example for a success like this. And your last movie was produced first on the theater stage in Vienna. And Complexities, the Commune, was a production Thomas Vinterberg done on the Burgtheater in Akademietheater. And then he used the play to develop the screenplay and make the movie. And you also produce another play, Begräbnis, in the book theater. So there is a really very close relation to actors, to rehearsing in the theater style, in the background of your work.
I was challenged by a colleague of yours, Matthias Hartmann, who I love and adore. Not everybody does, it seems, but I do. I respect him a great deal. He said to me, "Thomas, do you want to make theater?" I said, "No. I'm clueless. I don't know how to do it. Leave it to the experts," which, by the way, still is the case. And he flew back a couple of months later to Denmark and said, "Do you know what I'm going to pay you?" And I said, "No." And then when he told me, I said, "Okay, I'll do it." So that's the romantic opening of our relationship. But I was newly divorced and I needed a job. And Matthias gave me a lot more than that. He said, "Why don't you use the stage to test your dramatic material for your films?" Which was very humble, considering he was managing the biggest theater in the German-speaking territory. And he said, "I'll provide you the best actors you've ever met," which was right. It was amazing. Big respect for these actors on Burg Theater. And so I did. I had an idea in my mind of continuing the celebration and making the film of the reuniting of the family 10 years later, where the father has died. And it's a very, very, very gruesome story, much more gruesome than the celebration. It's hopeless, and it's the killing of my hero. And we tried that on stage, and it played for 2 years at Burg, very successfully. But I knew instantly that I'm never going to make that film. It was too dark. It imploded instead of explode. When I saw it, it was like, it saddened me. So I knew, so the experiment was done. And it did become a show that I'm very proud of on stage. It was horrifying. The darkest thing I've done. The opposite happened when I did Die Commune. He said to me, "What ideas do you have?" And I mentioned 7 or 8 ideas. And when I said I grew up in a commune, it was like, I want to see that. And everybody was very curious about the fact that I grew up in a collective. I don't know, there's a lot of curiosity towards that. I think it's, people imagine all sorts of erotic moments, or I don't know what it is. But so I decided to fulfill Matthias' curiosity, and he said, "You should only write like 40% of the script and then improvise the rest. And I'll give you the best actors in the world." And that's what happened.
It's also in the theater world a very uncommon way of working, I have to say, especially under the framework of the Burg Theater. And but on the other side, there's a logic in your work, because it's always deeply rooted in this character of the actors. And I would say, if I saw in YouTube clips of the Burg Theater production of Kollektivet, and I saw the movie, it's really strange to see how close they are sometimes.
Well, all the irrational moments that life consists of is what can appear through improvisations. Improvisation can be very boring if the actors don't have the ability to convey anything. But if it's great, trained, and clever actors, you can get something extraordinary. You can get all the surprises and irrationalities that a character should consist of. That takes forever to construct. We, as human beings, what we do does not make sense.
In which respect?
Well, the first time I realized this was when I did my graduate film, and I have this drunken guy. He's dying from cancer, and it's one long row of celebrations, of goodbyes. And he stands up and he says, "Okay, it's about time that I go home." And then he sits down and talks for half an hour. I guess that's how we do, right? Mm-hmm. But when you write scripts, there's a tendency to remove these awkwardness and these irrationalities.
It's not economically, there is another sense.
You know, after third rewrite, they sort of disappear, and life disappears. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to maintain. I think as an artist, wherever it's on stage or on the screen, if we can create life that stays with us, that rings truthfully, but even better, if it stays with us, then mission is completed. Then we have created life. Then we have created a character that everybody will carry with them. And then they can mirror themselves, or they can reflect themselves, or they can idolize it, or the opposite. That's rich.
In a way, it's very close to the topic of these talents relations. I mean, there are only few inventions in the history of mankind. I would say theater is a kind of museum of feelings. There is no other medium that allows us to preserve things that happen in the behavior of people between people. You can describe it in a novel, you can make a poem about it, but only in the theater text, and I would say in a way also in film, you really burn the text in a kind of behavior. And this behavior is in a structure that is hundreds of years old, sometimes thousands of years old. It's a museum for behavior, and there is no other container in the world that holds it in this way. So that's for me a very, I like this idea. And
it's interesting you say that, because working in theater, that was one thing that really saddened me, which is that it'll disappear.
Yeah.
It's going away. When the last curtain falls, it's gone. Obviously, our humble ambition and hope is that it'll stay with the audience.
But it come back, of course.
Well, yeah, I guess it exists
Sometimes.
somehow. But you know what? When it's in a can and you can put it on screen, it's kind of very satisfying as well.
Yeah.
But I understand what you say, obviously, and it's a very wise way of putting it.
There is a difference, of course, because what you are describing is, in a way, the process of a creation. Theater is usually a process of interpretation. You know, something that is already fixed I mean, there's one certain tradition of literature, theater, in which literature comes alive. And it's always theater of the death, who come alive and die again, and over centuries they come back. And in a way, a movie is preserving this moment, this one moment you speak about. In Festen, we saw this is banned forever. In the theater, it comes back and it's always refreshed from the time in which it happens. That's what I mean with coming back. And
it's interesting. Most of the films that I've done, I guess an artist has a couple of stories they tell through life, and they tell them in different ways. One of my themes is the impermanence of being. I don't understand why we're dying. And I don't understand where everything goes away, why everything goes away. When I did the Commune, that you will see some clips of, I did it because that's my upbringing, and I miss it, and I don't understand why it's going away. And all these characters that were sitting around that table, they're now old, and we can never move back together. It'll never happen again. And I fail to understand why that's the point. My wife is a theologist. She studies theology. She'll be a priest soon. And she's trying to explain. But I still don't get it. and if you watch the Commune, you'll see that people will say it's about Commune, it's about the 70s, it's about togetherness, it's about the individual against the togetherness, but beneath that, it's about the impermanence of being. Everything will go away. Everything will vanish. Everything has its time. And to some extent, theater is very honest about that. It's on stage, it's there, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
It's
It's
the art
outrageous.
of the moment, in a way.
For a control freak like myself, it's outrageous.
But
I felt when I saw the Burg Theater, the Academy, the opening of the Commune, I wanted it to be forever. Because that was a golden moment of my life. People were in tears, and they were smiling, and they were with the characters, and they forgot everything about everything around them. And I thought, well, who the fuck cares? It's over in 10 minutes. But obviously, it somehow it stayed.
I mean, there is another perspective of the actors, for example, because they really enjoyed night by night to have it again, to create it again. I mean, that's really a
but they wave goodbye to the director.
Yeah.
And when you come
course.
back to be part of that, you say you do notes, you call it something professional, but actually you just want to be part of it.
Yeah.
They're kind of, what are you doing here?
You can give only critic in this after the premiere.
Yes.
Yeah. But maybe it's the good point to skip to the Collectivit clip. Please, film up.
It's very interesting because Tobias Lindholm, the co-writer, and myself, we agreed that we wanted to avoid cliches about communes. No campfires, no cannabis, no, Ho Chi Minh stuff, all of that. And then I allowed myself 1 minute with genitals. And guess what's showing everywhere? The freaking genitals. Damn it. Well, anyway, it's a great clip. I like it. Thank you.
I think it was a real premiere of this glimpse of this new movie.
This is what people expect from our commune, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they expect to have us a fuck room as well. We didn't. Nobody had.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
there's this rumor.
I'm so lucky that I could see the film in advance. It's not a free commune. It's not like Commune Nummer 1 here in Berlin, and in this time it was not ideological, strange people who did have a big political project. In a way, it's very political. It's the politic of life. But they are all well settled in the real, I would say, also bourgeois world, and they make a step beside, and they feel bored, like the women, the central character, the lady. She felt bored in her ordinary life with her husband and says, let's try something else. And I think they drink a lot of beer, they smoke a lot, this was the time. And there's something more I was really wondering about. In the end of the film, one of the characters says, the life of the young boy we saw shortly in the movie, in this clip, it was based in an age of love, and now it's over, this age of love. What would you say? What was it, this age of love?
Well, back then, it was about sharing. There was a guy in my commune. He suggested that you pay rent per income. So the more income you have, the more rent you pay. He was the guy making the most money, so his rent went up 3 times. That just doesn't exist anymore. It was about sharing. It was about creating a space for each other. It was about generosity, and it was about camaraderie. So I grew up in a commune like this. I grew up in a house which I loved, bathed in orange light, at least in my memory. And with this big giant dinner table where everybody would share ideas, jokes, stupidities. They wouldn't share wives or dope. These are well-off academics just deciding to share a house, which back then was very provoking. They came out of the 50s and the oppressive fathers and family structure. So that was a riot. And they felt very naughty doing it. And they felt very courageous doing it. And they felt on thin ice. And they felt together. And even on first class. Because it was big, lovely houses they suddenly could afford in the best area of Copenhagen. So, in that sense, it was very comparable to Dogma. It was scary, and it felt courageous doing it. And we sort of jumped off a cliff, but hand in hand. And that binds people together in an extended family that'll never go away. These are my fathers and mothers forever. For good and for worse. Obviously, there were demons, and we'll see that in a minute, I guess, as well. And this will turn dark towards the end, and so on. But it was a time of togetherness. Whereas at the 80s, in the same house, there would be 3 families around the table, not wanting to move out because they liked the garden. And there would be a cleaning lady. And there would be skateboards and basketballs in my room. And there would be a huge influence from America. And there would be the individualism arriving, which I also thought was incredibly powerful and magnetic to some extent. I remember watching this image of a guy, a broker, I guess, on his way to a bank downtown Manhattan in a great suit on a skateboard. This is fucking sexy. He's alone. There's no house meetings. And he's making a lot of money and he's free to go, which has another power with it. Obviously, I'm a leftist. I believe in socialism. I believe in togetherness. But the 80s was also very interesting, I guess.
There is a character in the movie. It's a little girl. Or she's not so little. She's about 40, 16.
Yeah, teenager, 14.
Teenager, yeah. And she's the observer of the Commune. How old have you been in this time?
Well, to some extent, she's me back then. Yeah, I was 14. Some of the time, at least.
Okay.
And I was there 12 years, so at some point I was 14.
Okay, so you moved with your parents in this house and in this time in similar circumstances, and you made similar experiences like the girl?
No, well, I moved in at the age of 7, 8,
okay.
And I was like, what the fuck is this? I was wearing glasses, and I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't wear glasses, I wanted to wear glasses. Mm-hmm. And I was wearing braces. No, I didn't. I wanted to wear braces as well. And I didn't like the mess. I wanted things straight. And then my parents introduced me to this mayhem. And the first thing I meet is a boy, 2 years old. He's sort of my brother. I see him all the time. But he arrives in front of me, 2 years old, with a beer in his hand. And a naked cock. He's 2 years, so that's fine. But, still, I'm like... But that was the age of 7. And I was very embarrassed about this place up until the age of 10, 11, 12-ish, where my friends seemed to always wanted to go to my place. And they would never go home. And I had days where 5 friends would stay in my basement room because they loved it there. And I also fell in love with this way of living deeply over the years. Did I answer your question?
I think so, yes.
You haven't seen the film, so this may not be, well, I don't know.
Maybe we can have the next clip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Or
see
you can go
more
and
of the
see it.
film. I think it's one of the most touching and dramatic moments in the movie, but I think it's helpful to know something of what's going on before this moment.
I guess so. That's why there was a bit of a thing going on here. I forgot to tell you. This woman invents the commune, and her husband finds another girl, and she, in order to share everything, she invites them both to live in the commune. So they all live in the commune, and that comes with a price, and that price begins here. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, you see the parallel montage of the very warm and happy feeling of the commune in this house, and then you have this blue and cold and a very technical situation in which her private life collapses in an unforgettable way.
And professional life.
And professional life too.
Yeah. So you asked me if I have experienced any of all this. I was asked many times after the celebration.
Yeah.
Like, is this based on personal experience? I'm like, no, I never slept with my dad. I have a very lovable father, and also this story is completely fiction. It's very important to say that making a movie comes out of curiosity. It doesn't necessarily come out of personal experience. If you're curious enough, and if you can investigate human beings, or human beings in different situations, and if you're open, and you're not self-absorbed, then maybe you can make a good movie. It's, as I said before, it's about not pointing the camera this way. It's about pointing that way. It's all about curiosity. It's about the desire to see what's around you. What are the options? What can I bring? A way to make yourself curious is to put yourself in danger. If you put yourself in a situation where you're too safe, you'll start getting self-occupied and find yourself interesting. You're not interesting. The way to maintain curiosity is to put yourself at risk. Like if you spar with your writer and you decide, or he suggests, or you say something crazy. What about this? Oh, no, that would be too far, and then do it. Okay? Go out there where you're not sure what's happening, and then maybe there's something interesting.
I think it's correspondence also with the situation in the Commune, because it's also not safe. If I see the Festen, or it's the family commune, or if I see your last movie, basically most of your movies are dealing with this group phenomenon, and with the instability in these groups, and with there are winners and losers, and we saw for a moment the loser of this group, and I would say this is also something that is rooted probably in your decision to start with a group, the Dogma group, and with a manifest, like we did here in the beginning of this movie. They have rules how to elect a person, and what is the essence of the rule to live together. And I think there is a connection between this collectivate situation and your work.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been attracted to communes since I lived in one, and Dogma is a commune, Centropa that I work for is a crazy commune, and a film crew is a commune. And if you're ready to share, and if you're ready to listen, then you can be part of a commune and you can get a great deal out of it. But what binds people together is the risk. I remember watching this French commercial once. Here's a woman on a bicycle in Paris. There's a small dog in her basket on the bike. She falls over, and the dog falls out of the basket. Accidentally, the goalkeeper of the national French soccer team walks down the street sees that and jumps in slow motion, whoa, through the air and catches the dog. Accidentally, a lot of old and beautiful, both old and young and whatever, beautiful people are by the window witnessing this, and they start clapping, right? Which to some extent is a great commercial. But what they did from this point is the risk point, because then he gets so excited by all the applause that he does a great kick with the dog. Okay? And I know that this meeting with all these commercial people have been like, what do you want to do? And they may even have shot it without telling the client, but it has put their thing at risk. And it has combined the film crew and the spectators in something slightly scandalous, obviously, when in the borders of making a commercial. So the scandal is important, it's essential. It makes us curious. It makes us alive. And I've become somehow addicted to that. I like the scandal within the frame of a commune. Because then you're together and doing something dangerous. And that's obviously a wonderful moment and a wonderful place to be, especially creatively.
Danger makes also that people come closer. And I think that, your movies are telling about what happens if people really come close. For me, one idea I did have is maybe it's interesting to ask you if you're interested in these new technologies that makes feeling more closer, because I think your work is changed by technology changements.
Social media.
Yeah, no, I mean this 360-degree virtual reality. The attempt. There was a great interview of Werner Herzog some days before in the New Yorker, and he described that he feels really attached by this situation in which, in this understanding of movie, you don't look at something that happens on the screen, you're in the situation of the screen. And sometimes I feel that you try to bring us in the situation of your situation in the movie. And technological, I think there is a step from this very cheap video camera you used in the beginning, and now you work with a very best equipment, I think, and the next step of development is that we really create situations we can't imagine right now in this moment by this use of new possibilities offered by this 360-degree virtual reality development. Are you attracted by this? I mean, it's always a try to make situations more naked.
No.
No?
I'm not. I'm not against it, but I'm not attracted. I'm sort of indifferent to it. That's not a political statement. That's not part of a debate. That's just a simple truth. And I think you have to be honest about your curiosity. My curiosity is not of a technical kind. I've often been misunderstood to be a technical pioneer because I was doing dogma. But my curiosity lies within the human being. I'm always curious about the human fragility and human togetherness more than I'm interested in new technology. I start with the actor, and I start with the character and the moment, and then I build from there, and then at some point in the process, I meet technology. And at that point, I'm loaded with so much idea of what I want to do that I find the technology interesting. Prior to that, I don't give a shit. If you look at Lars von Trier, my colleague, it's the other way around. He is the avant-garde in filmmaking, in the form of filmmaking, and he loves the media, and he loves to explore it. And then after that, he adds some actors and moves them around and do some sinister stuff with them. And it's just, you just have to figure out who you are. I don't think there's a right and wrong in this. It's just, the right thing is to be honest about it and to be purified about who am I and where is my curiosity, what do I fancy. So to all the people that goes to film schools or start their careers, they have to find their source. What do you call that? The rolling water? They have to find the stuff that turns them on.
Yeah, okay.
Their thing. If you look at Lars, his thing is something else than my thing. There's a lot of great directors who, you just mentioned one of them, I have a great respect for him, who are occupied with these matters. And then you have to listen to it. I guess you have to find out what you truly admire and what truly makes you curious.
What are you curious? This is the moment of Q&A. You're invited to ask questions.
Everything. There's a microphone coming, so hang on.
But first, I wanted to thank you for this meeting. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'm really, really curious, how do you choose actors? Because I'm also an actress and I would love to be in your movie. So, is it possible? Thank you.
Well, you've got a great part in my... You did well. See, what I normally do, what I used to do, what I did in Celebration, the Festen, Das Fest, was I was writing my script for specific actors. Because already on the page, I would challenge this person and I would create around this person. I guess the same thing happened on stage at Academy. I got 10 actors or 9 actors and I wrote scenes for them. And that's how important I find the actors. My work of directing is so much about finding the right dialogue, the right words, the right situations for the right actors. When that has been accomplished, when you've taken the right person and put them in a situation that challenges them somehow, then 80% of my work is done. Then the rest is a little bit more, a little bit less, too loud, not too loud, you know. I'm exaggerating, but a major part of what I do as a director is to create the character in collaboration with the actor. So my casting process is very much about finding people who I admire, who I want to spend my summer with, who I've made films with before, who I think needs a part soon, which is interesting, or, you know, those kind of motivations. On Celebration, there's an Afro-American guy. He's my best friend. He moved to New York. He couldn't afford a ticket home, so I wrote a part for him. And that's how this character came about. Again, it's about curiosity and mutual understanding and love, I guess. So casting, whatever you call it, is incredibly important to me, and it's a long and tough part of the job. What I hate about it is that I can pick and choose. It must be so difficult to be an actress or an actor, just being ready to be picked. But it's also quite uncomfortable to be able to pick everybody. It's like, I want to be on the same level, and you're obviously not in that process. But, you know, it comes with the job. Was that enough? Oh, there's a...
Yeah, first of all, thank you. My question is about Susanne Bier, because I want to ask what her role was in the Dogma, or if she even had one, because I really feel like her earlier films, which I really like, are kind of that Dogma-like films, and what do you think of her recent films?
Wow. Well, Suzanne made a Dogma film, and I can't remember the English title, but it's a film that I admire very much, and it's an amazing movie. I never had a conversation with her about why she did that, so I cannot answer her for her, and you'll have to ask her yourself. I'm sorry about that.
Can I have a question? I don't know. Does it work? Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for the talk first. It's great.
No, just a moment, please. There's a lady.
Oh, sorry.
Who's talking? Someone is talking.
Can you?
Yeah, hi.
I'm lost. Put your hand up.
Who wants to go first? Oh,
There you are. Hello.
I always
Choose.
want to do that. Okay. What do you enjoy most about making a movie? Like, do you like writing the script for the actors, or having the audience see the film the first time, or being on set, stepping in and out?
Well, what I dislike the most about movie making is showing it to people. It's a very, very fearful moment. What I love about movie making, or there's many things about movie making I love, and the older I get, the more I like writing, actually. All the hubbub about the equipment and all the meetings and all that crap becomes boring over the years. But creating, pursuing these little fragile, unique moments with the actors among such a big group and so much technology around you, everybody's focused on finding this little thing. And when it happens, and when it sparkles, and when they do something amazing, and it spreads out to the whole crew, and are in tears or in laughter, then it's a fantastic sensation, and probably something I've become addicted to. So I guess that's what I love the most.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Shall we try now? Here on the first balcony. Hello? Can you see us? Here. We're waving.
Everybody
Yes.
not speaking,
That's-
put your hands down.
I'll stand up just to see me. Thanks for the talk. Sorry, I'm first. Haha. I just wanted to ask about the directing, since I'm a director, or at least I claim myself to be. About the director, like we're supposed to give directions, but how do we act to be a directors, not a dictators? Because sometimes happens. So, or maybe it happens to me, or to not everyone else. So what would you advise on that?
Well, well, first of all, what I said in the beginning of this session was about clarity. It should be very clear that you're the one making the decisions. If that's very clear, the authority is also clear, and then there's no reason to be a dictator. If everybody knows that it ends on your table, and you're going to do with it what you want to do, then you can be open. And then you can be open to suggestions. I think the best way of giving space is to tell people what space they can be within. I don't know how else to put it. Well, another way is to be very honest. I'm always as honest as possible. Like, for instance, if I've been writing a shitty scene, and now the day has come where we shoot it, and it's still shitty, then that's what I will say to the actors. The scene is crap. Maybe there's something about this line that we can use. Can you help me? That's also a way of showing authority. It's a way of sharing, but still, it's them helping you, right? In many discussions with actors, that has become, a question of mistrust. That's where it's tempting to become dictators and say, just do it, or go this way or the other way. And I've learned to say, show me. Show me what it is that you mean. If you mean something different than I mean, show me. And I'll see if I like it. These are just tricks. This is just my way of doing it. Normally, I don't have that problem of being a dictator, and probably it's because they know I'm going to do with it whatever I like anyway. I remember doing the celebration, and the mother, I had said to all the actors, you're free, you can do whatever you like. So she was in tears in every take. She started crying, and she's an amazing actress. She's very good at crying, but I said to her, listen, you may cry too much. You'll have to save some energy to the end of the film where she sort of explodes. And if you've already been crying, it's like you're leaking energy. She said, but you always say we could do what we want. I said, yeah, but and there was a quarrel, and she kept crying. And then I cut the whole thing out. It's as simple as that. And she's not crying anymore.
Hello to being here.
I think this gentleman is, that's my understanding.
Hello. Thank you for being here and to share your... why your own dogma? Why?
I think it's still working.
Why you left your own dogma rule, not using music in the film? Because the two scenes we saw.
Oh yeah, I heard him. So you're asking, why did I leave my rules of dogma? You've just seen two scenes with, as an example, full of music, and I can add to that, full of makeup and period clothing. It's very, very far from dogma. Well, to some extent I answered that earlier by saying dogma was meant to be a revolt, and it was meant to be a renewal of cinema. And when it became fashion, and even became a vehicle for people to come into festivals and stuff, there was no longer this, you couldn't talk about a renewal anymore. And I had to leave it immediately and do the exact opposite.
Yeah, but then I would like to understand, this sounds like if there were only exterior reasons to make dogma films. Because if they define how how the people see these movies, so where were the original reasons to make the dogma film?
Well, I can understand what you're saying, and what I brought with me from back then, and which I think will remain part of my, or top of my agenda as a director, is the purity, okay? I wanted to be as naked and as pure as possible. Sometimes I achieve that, sometimes I don't. But had I made, for instance, The Hunt or The Commune accordingly to the dogma rules, it wouldn't have looked naked. It would look like a style, even an old style. It would look like an old dress. It's become a brand more than its purity. So what I had to do is to reinvent and find other ways to get under the skin of my actors and my situations. That's why. Thank you.
Hello. Hi.
And that's very difficult, by the way. Dogma was to some extent a completion of something, which made it very difficult to overcome, but repeating it would be worse.
Hello, hi. Thanks a lot for this wonderful talk. I would like to ask you one thing that you have already mentioned about your method of working with actors. Because you mentioned that you have these 2 weeks of improvised rehearsals. And I was wondering if you have those 2 weeks after they learn the lines of the script or before that. So do you make this improvisation as a kind of like layer to work like when they already know their lines, or you first kind of dig them deep into this improv world and then they kind of work from there?
It varies, and it's a question every time, and I always call 4 of my colleagues and say, what do I do this time? as a procedure, I normally make a script, then I do a reading, which is very dangerous. But I do a reading for them, or with them. Then we learn about the characters, we learn about the actor's approach to the character, and then I do a rewrite. At least one rewrite. I don't know if any of you have seen a film that I did called The Hunt. That was with Mads Mikkelsen, and it was a great example of this. He's such a stallion, he's such a beautiful man. And the character that we wrote, Tobias Lindholm and myself, was equally strong. He was like a young Robert De Niro in Deer Hunter kind of person. He was a blacksmith, and he wouldn't say much, and he was capable. And then when I had Mats in the room, he's already very capable, and I felt a lack of something, and I guess he did as well. And by talking, improvising a little bit, primarily talking actually at this stage, we figured out to completely change this character into a school teacher with glasses that would step aside from everyone on the sidewalk. A very humbled person. And I guess finding that recipe or that chemical reaction in your head that makes you think, oh my Lord, if this character experiences this, then it becomes three-dimensional. That's what we're pursuing in all the ways possible. Sometimes rehearsals for me are useless. I remember doing a film called Submarino. I had to find one of my well-trained theater school actors had to become an ex-prisoner with gravitas and seriousness in his eyes. And we rehearsed, and he just became increasingly grumpy. And it didn't work. And everything I said didn't work. Then you have to find a different way. Then, as a director, you're in charge of making this work. It just has to work, even though there's only 3 days before shooting. So I sent him to a home of ex-cons, and I said, you move in there until we start shooting. And when he came out, it worked. I don't know what he saw there. I don't know, I don't care even. But he came out with the weight that this character needed. So, there isn't a system that works. You have to keep insisting on making it work with whatever means you have, and sometimes you find them in rehearsals, sometimes you don't.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, there is the last question, the last row.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor meeting you here. I'm a great admirer, and I think that The Fasten is really one of the best films in the history of cinema, so thank you for that. And as a cinematographer, I wanted to ask you a question related to The Hunt, for example, because I just shot a film that's on Forum now, and it was shown a couple of days ago, and it was a controversial documentary. After that, we started to have even threats through some papers. So I wanted to ask you, like, did you ever experience something like that with Hunt, for example, being critical to the society that you live in? Like, did you ever felt like, did you have problems like that? And how do you cope with that? And how do you continue working on a story? Not just concentrating on a person, on a human, as you were saying, but like when you're reflecting to the society around you that you're coming from. Thank you.
Well, luckily I've never been threatened. Or, well, I have, but not for that reason. But I do want to say that I can proudly say that The Hunt was a film spreading from the cultural section of the newspapers to the debate section. And it became a huge debate in a country paralyzed by fear. And I guess you can be proud of that reaction, and I guess that's part of what I guess that's maybe one of the proudest things we can achieve with this, is to make people talk and think and reflect and see themselves or oppose themselves to what we do. So as long as you don't get molested you should just be proud. Right? Thank you.
Maybe nobody dares to ask you what is your next film. I know it's about alcohol, and I know that our time is now over. So maybe there's one thought about your last film to give us.
My next film?
Yeah, your next film.
Okay, so my next Danish film, which may not be my next film, but I don't know. My next Danish film is a celebration of alcohol.
Okay, we are looking forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.